Remember in 2020, was that just 6 years ago, when men took to the streets because they couldn't get a haircut? Y'all remember that? Do you remember men rushing to the Capitol because they were pissed off that their hair salon was closed? Tap, tap. Is this thing on? We have a society where men are at the center of society. They only show up. They only spill in the streets if they can't get a haircut. If they don't want to wear a mask, they spill out in the streets for that. If they don't want to get a vaccine, men will spill in the streets for that. But honestly, have there been in the Americas, because we're not the center of the universe. We're not even seen as a first world country anymore. We're up in here with men that are ignoring everything. I mean, if men are not protecting women and children, what are they doing? And for the guys that will eventually maybe spill into the streets, there's going to be bras and panties thrown at them all their life. They are going to be known as the heroes. They will never have another lonely day again. There will be cakes, pies, muffins, anything they want. Women will be lined up around their home. But see, that's not, they don't want to have to do any work. There's no one telling them it's time to, will you take the trash out? Or, by the way, don't forget it's the parent-teacher conference tonight. And then they'll say, what are the teachers' names again? They've just been in oblivion for their whole life. I mean to say that I would walk into the teachers' classes and I go, okay, this is Nolan's teacher. Her name is O. Because they never paid attention to any of it. They never paid attention to any of it. We would sit at the dinner table and say Nolan would talk about his teacher. My husband would never remember that teacher's name, but he would remember every single stat. Because boy math is, if it doesn't affect them, he'd remember every stat for his fantasy football team. He'd remember every guy's picks for fantasy football. He'd get on the phone and go, Randy, your dude just dropped a pass. He'd remember Randy's guy dropped a pass. But he didn't remember the names of my doctors, didn't remember significant dates. But he'd remember everybody's fantasy football picks. Get on the phone with those guys. This was before we even had, well, I guess we had phone numbers and cell phones by then. But back then they even used to remember their friends' phone numbers. And in 2020, just 6 years ago, they spilled in the streets for themselves. But see, they have never spilled in the streets for a woman. They've never gone to bat for women. They do that when they're younger and full of testosterone. But as it turns out, I used to think that they were protecting women, but it was really that they were protecting their own ego. If you had a young boyfriend, I always had a boyfriend from the time I was 12 years old. I've never been so free at last. Thank God Almighty, I'm free at last. I'd rather live in a box by myself in a 4,000 square foot house with 4.5 bathrooms. I've never been in the actual box, but I'm just saying, I have been in the 4,000 square foot house with 4.5 bathrooms. I promise you, it takes all fucking day to clean those 4.5 bathrooms. There's pee everywhere. I'm just saying. It's not what it looks. If you have to pay for someone to clean your bathrooms, is it really worth it? I mean, really. But I digress. Of course, I usually do digress. But what we're seeing here is we have a few scattered men. A few scattered. But most of them are, and I see through the comments that women are like, he is completely underreacting to all of this. He has daughters that age. If you go over on Threads, people are spilling their guts. I read a story today about a girl who, when she was young, she shared a bedroom with her brother until they got older. And almost every night, the father would come in and do his thing with the brother. And then in the morning, she said she can still remember the bed squeaking and listening to her brother sob. Quietly, of course. And then in the morning, the dad would come in and rip the covers off because the brother had urinated in the bed at night. See, what most Black and brown people don't understand, this happened in almost every other home on the block, to at least one person in the family. I know I'm serious. And the reason that men aren't going to do anything about it is, especially at our age, men, is because they know, they are positive, men over 50 are positive that there were times that they'd had too much to drink or the woman had too much to drink. They may have gone ahead without getting consent. And back then, it wasn't until the year 2000s. I mean, in the 1980s, every woman I know, their first experience was without consent. Every woman that I was friends with as a teenage girl, they would start crying and tell about what happened with Jamie or what happened with Chad. This is the end. Because we've seen them take to the streets if they can't get a hamburger because their hamburger place is closed. We've seen them take to the streets if they can't get a haircut. But has anyone seen one single man take to the streets at all? Anywhere. I've seen a few little towns with a guy that has a sign up that says Donald Trump is a trape schnist. But anywhere else? No. They're indoors on their phones.